Okay, I'm going to speak slowly so everyone has a chance to really digest what I have to say. And I want to begin by quoting Holly Etlin, Chief Restructuring Officer, Chief Financial Officer, the turnaround god as proclaimed by Glenn himself. And I want to quote the declaration she provided to the bankruptcy court on April 23rd, and that's docket number 10. Bed Bath & Beyond has pulled off long-shot transactions several times in the last 6 months, so nobody should think Bed Bath & Beyond will not be able to do so again. To the contrary, Bed Bath & Beyond and its professionals will make every effort to salvage all or a portion of operations for the benefit of all stakeholders. I'm going to read that one more time. Bed Bath & Beyond has pulled off long-shot transactions several times in the last 6 months, so nobody should think Bed Bath & Beyond will not be able to do so again. To the contrary, Bed Bath & Beyond and its professionals will make every effort to salvage all or a portion of operations for the benefit of all stakeholders. It wasn't just the IP and liquidation. I went back and I read through the entire transcript, the one our electrician ape kindly purchased for us a few months ago after the first hearing. And I was reading David Hillman's testimony. He's Sixth Street's lawyer, and he did a great job summarizing the financial support that was extended to Bed Bath and Beyond. And this, how this came out on the heels of this retail apocalypse, a global pandemic that permanently changed our consumer behavior. Sixth Street stepped up in August with the FILO loan, and this was just a few days after Ryan Cohen sold his shares. And they provided $375 million in financing to supposedly fund their turnaround plan at the time. Another $100 million in February. And mind you, we later learned that money came after the company was already soliciting bidders in December for a 363 sale in Chapter 11. So Sixth Street already knew the company had plans to file, and they still provided that $100 million. And they made 5 amendments to the loan terms in the 3 months prior to the Chapter 11 filing, at which point they provided a $95 million DIP financing with a $200 million roll-up. So it's important to recognize that both the DIP and the FILO facility collateralized every asset of the debtor, or substantially all of the assets owned by Bed Bath & Beyond. And as PP always says, they've paid down the ABL 5 years in advance, and that's what gave Sixth Street this super priority as creditor. Now, a bank like Sixth Street doesn't knowingly burn its capitals, its capital. Investing, they don't invest in companies on the verge of a Chapter 7-esque liquidation, and they're also not driven by altruism either. They're a business. They're a financial services business, and as such, they intend for their debt in some way to provide to give them leverage down the line, so they can use that debt to serve as a payment in kind for the entire company if they have to when it's time to collect. So we've all been waiting for someone to publicly place an offer and acquire the company without realizing, at least for me, that these frequent repeated loans provided by Sixth Street over the past year have essentially served as payments for the company's assets. It's an unorthodox way of getting a leverage buyout to occur right under our noses. And I think that's why the Chapter 11 plan promises Sixth Street nearly 100% projected recovery on their claims. So when you take a look at this at first, seemingly it's unfortunate for shareholders. The table summarizing the expected recoveries, we're projected to have a 0% recovery. And in that presentation format, the shills, the meltdowners, the idiots, they're having a field trip. They've been given this easy number to point to that fits their narrative. And I really think some of them are genuine. I think some of them are genuinely under the impression that it's over for us. And these media hit pieces claiming we're going to be wiped out, it's just reinforcing their arrogance. So that's where I think we need to pause and think rationally for a moment. First, we need to reflect on who's behind Sixth Street. The bank didn't go above and beyond to fund the company's ass over the past year so that they can trade home furniture or risk making pennies on the dollar for unsold towels and curtains. Someone's been pulling the strings using Sixth Street as their agent, their middleman. And I've made it clear before that I believe the coincidental timing of RC's exit and the entry of Sixth Street as this central figure in the saga, it supports the idea of RC being behind the curtain. And to me, it explains why we have RC Ventures listed as a creditor on Pacer and in the dockets, and why on PitchBook, this $20,000 a year subscription service confirms his involvement up until the day they filed for Chapter 11, April 23rd. And one thing that's been made absolutely clear to everyone is the company's financial position. It's their debt. So how much money does Bed Bath & Beyond owe and to whom? So that's something that everyone agrees on. And it's that way because it's outlined so methodically in the legal filings. So if RC Ventures is listed as a certified creditor, where's the entry in the books and financial statements? Where's the mention of the amount owing to RC in the court hearings? The details of the financing he provided. Bed Bath owes RC money. Where are the details of that debt? And to me, a simple explanation is that he's been acting as a guarantor for the loans that have been offered by Sixth Street. I also believe he's holding nearly 85% of the bonds as a retail investor. So with Freeman's holdings amounting to only 14% of the total. So this would explain at least why Ryan Cohen, in his personal capacity, is listed as a creditor in addition to RC Ventures. And when you have it that way, as a consequence, both Sixth Street and RC as separate entities, they could still be considered duplicate recipients. So whenever you have these relevant court documents that are ready to be served, it could potentially explain why RC's address show up as undeliverable. And that's just my opinion. So just to regurgitate briefly what I've said, Sixth Street's put Bed Bath & Beyond into this deeply leveraged position over the past year. They financed them even when they knew the company would be shortly filing for Chapter 11. And they overtook JP Morgan's claims over any collateralized assets, and they adopted this super priority through the DIP financing, allowing the company also to pay off the ABL years ahead of schedule. Within a year, starting from the moment RC sold, Sixth Street became entitled to nearly 100% of the company's assets, with the exception of the IP, which, as we know, was leased to Overstock.com and Dream on Me. So Sixth Street's projected recovery, according to the Chapter 11 plan, is 100%. Whoever is behind Sixth Street, likely in my opinion to be Ryan Cohen, effectively owns the shell of the company. And that's the remaining inventory, the real estate, the logistics, the operations. And just as a side note, we know they do intend to reorganize and preserve the business. You know, Life was very clever to demonstrate the preservation of 235 Bed Bath & Beyond stores, 68 baby stores that weren't auctioned in the lease sales. So think, will the successor behind Sixth Street, who effectively owns 100% of the company, want to eliminate us, the shareholders of the company they just acquired? Wouldn't such a successor want to take advantage of the nose that Bed Bath & Beyond itself emphasized in written language is a valuable asset for a going concern auction acquisition? So, well, if they want the nose, the ticker needs to survive. So the credit bid that Sixth Street's going to make, it's likely going to involve some kind of debt for equity stock exchange, and somehow we maintain some ownership. Wouldn't such a successor, who then holds shares of this company, want to capitalize on the short squeeze potential? Are they not in the business to make money? So, assuming that RC is truly the successor behind Sixth Street, I'll slow it down a bit. Wouldn't he want his vision, as he very clearly articulated in his March 22 letter to the board, wouldn't he want to unlock shareholder value Wouldn't he want to avoid, fucking over his loyal investors? Wouldn't he want to avoid tarnishing his reputation as a pump and dumper, and give the those insolent producers behind making of the meme, whatever documentary, wouldn't he want to prevent them from having further credibility? Wouldn't he want and need to eliminate short hedge funds, illegally shorting, naked shorting every one of his business ventures with no end in sight? So it's easy when we're in this constant defense mode, trying to justify our investment in the company, when we're being hit with a tsunami of FUD from relentless rabid shills. It's easier to forget the bigger picture. And my theory, and a theory that a lot of us hold, is that Ryan Cohen has this dual purpose for Bed Bath and Beyond. On the one hand, it's this cost-efficient avenue to take Teddy Holdings public, so it can compete with Amazon's market share. We all have eyes to recognize that Teddy's much bigger than a series of children's books. And Bed Bath & Beyond is also the perfect candidate for a short squeeze, to break the basket and finally bring an end to this illegal naked short selling. The bigger picture is that we're invested in a bear trap. And the fact that the meltdowners and the media are running with this Chapter 11 plan with orgasmic highs is a testament to how intelligently subtle and this trap has been laid. So the evidence is in front of us. Nothing in the Chapter 11 plan disqualifies shareholders from participating in a stock exchange deal. Something that we've always wanted to trigger a short squeeze. And if anything, they explicitly mention potential distributions to claimants. And remember also, whoever is holding those unexercised derivatives from the warrant deals, whoever is holding them was explicitly given the right to receive dividends. For a company that's gasping for air, it's remarkable that they took the time to thoroughly stipulate the dividend rights for unexercised warrant holders. It's almost as if they expected some kind of distribution in the near future. So within the disclosure statement itself, the one filed a few days ago, the definition of a liquidation transaction, it includes mergers. It includes reorganizations, consolidations, transfers. So find me one other bankruptcy document that characterizes a merger as a liquidation transaction. It's very clear to me that these dockets are not written for apes. They're not written for shareholders. The written language itself in these dockets, I believe they're written for an algorithm. The moves made by the board, who some of you may forget, what's her name? It's headed by Carol Flatten, a former associate of Carl Icahn. The moves made by Holly Etlin, by the all-star general counsel and chief legal officer, David Kasten, who recently claimed the job's not done on his LinkedIn page, by Kirkland and Ellis Lazard, who were paid $11 million for an unknown transaction. Alex Partners, whose former managing director, David Willits, he's currently president and CEO of Icahn Enterprises. So the moves by these top executives have always taken place behind closed doors, to maintain confidentiality of the company's status, basically at all times. They're not working to reassure us apes. These people, they've cleverly, in my opinion, and intricately, they designed this complex M&A, with the details of which hidden behind NDAs, and they've done this under the guise of a failing bankrupt company on the verge of utter devastation and shareholder liquidation. It's amazing. So let's keep our emotions out of the play, and let's be smart about how we manage our expectations. When all of us put our hard-earned money into this play, we knew objectively the company was struggling financially. We knew their situation was dire. We knew the risk of liquidation was real, but for many of us, we didn't invest in BBBY to invest. Sorry about that. It's my first time making a video. I didn't realize there was a limit to how much I could record. The point I was trying to make before I cut off was that we didn't invest in this ticker to invest in a failing company. We invested in Ryan Cohen. We trusted him. Not with blind faith, but with the knowledge of his extraordinary past accomplishments and his proven loyalty to both the customer and the shareholder. And on top of that, his absolute disdain for short sellers, it just made the opportunity so much more convincing. And that's why we invested, because Ryan Cohen's cooking. So I just want to quote again Holly Etlin's declaration. Bed Bath & Beyond has pulled off long-shot transactions several times in the last 6 months. Nobody should think Bed Bath & Beyond will not be able to do so again. We were told when RC dumped we were told RC dumped his shares on us. And we discovered later they were sold as part of a private off-exchange transaction. And he remained involved up until at least the end of April, as per his pitch book entry, and his name as an interested party in the dockets. And we were told the bond payments were missed earlier this year until they're paid. We were told that they weren't going to give these laid off employees their severance packages until they did. We learned that Bed Bath & Beyond defaulted on its debt obligations until the default was cured and the loan de-accelerated, something that almost never happens. We were told we would be caught in a dilution death spiral via RS until it was canceled. We were told we'd have our assets stripped and individually auctioned until they weren't. So the auction, as Travis mentions, was made nearly impossible to place a qualified bid for. It was ultimately canceled. So think, in a normal scenario, when you stop an auction before it takes place, effectively you're robbing the shareholders from the opportunity to gain any recovery. So there's absolutely no way that would be allowed under the judge's under his watch if the Chapter 11 plan didn't have provisions that compensated us in some shape or form. There's absolutely no way we'd be left with canceled shares and nothing else, with Sue Gov talking about the company's futures and plans to improve female governance over the coming years, a week ahead of the Chapter 11 filing. So if you understand the legal suicide that would put the board and Sue Gov in the competence of Judge Papalia, you would know that, into question, you would know that we're not going to be wiped out. RC emphasizes in his letter he reserves the right to hold the board accountable for their actions as they conduct their business. And let's not forget that CNBC themselves, they leaked news of a credit bid by Sixth Street in an e-commerce platform, which I believe is to be Dragonfly, the same Dragonfly that RC, Larry Cheng, Brett Icahn, as served and left as board members until very recently. The same Dragonfly that blatantly proclaims in their mission statement their vision of building a next generation consumer products platform, one that's funded by Volition Capital, which itself is headed by Larry Cheng, RC's right-hand man. The same Larry Cheng who tweeted minutes before Bed Bath & Beyond's SEC filings were dropped using the words going concern for the first time, around the time Harriet Edelman had her RSAs forfeited. Larry Cheng's tweet about securing $675 million for Volition, claiming that they were ready to go for 2023 and beyond. And beyond. So that was added exclusively for Twitter. So when you compare the same announcement presented on his LinkedIn page, if you're still not, it doesn't include the on beyond. And if you're still not convinced I'll remind you, he had actually secured the funding several months in advance. Um, and that tweet specifically represented the first time the man communicated with his Twitter followers in months. And he just so happened to post it at the perfect time to encourage any hopeful ape like me to hold. Um, so Sixth Street, and in other words, Ryan Cohen and Dragonfly owned the company, in my opinion. When RC hinted just a few weeks ago that his salary had doubled, implying he's the CEO of a new company, did any super stonker did they ever figure out what new company he's referring to or could be referring to? Is it also a coincidence that we learn Ryan Cohen was appointed executive chairman of GME, putting him in charge of capital allocation? Is it also a coincidence that Matt Furlong, who has a history managing Amazon in Australia, he's been terminated not for long before his new function is revealed? It comes 2 years after his non-compete with Amazon expired. How many coincidences do we need to realize there's a fundamental transaction in the works and that the picture we hold collectively in our minds is reality? So, with all of this said, I just want to emphasize to whoever's listening, this play is not over for shareholders. We've reached a pivotal moment in the journey, and personally, I find myself fueled with an unyielding bullishness. I genuinely believe the short squeeze is going to happen. I believe in the potential of our equity. I think the shares are going to surpass $500. And I'm resolute in my decision. I'm going to hold until the bittersweet end. I, I think what we're going to see is some kind of reverse merger that's going to convert the shell of the company into Teddy. I think we're going to be receiving shares as a dividend as part of that reorganization. And I think the transaction is going to prove to be an extraordinary moment in the history of the stock market when it's finally announced. And I'm going to be a proud Bobby. Not because the final result, is this massive short squeeze and it's going to benefit me insanely financially with these gains, but it's also because the transaction itself represents this powerful blow to short hedge funds. And it forces them to be accountable for naked short selling. Um, as the investor who has had the diamond hands to go through this with all this shit being thrown at us, as the guys and girls who confronted and fought back against misinformation, we're the ultimate champions of this change. Don't be confused by that. It's our commitment. It's our stubborn degeneracy. Our degeneracy was the force that leveled the playing field in the end. It's what reshaped the landscape of the stock market for future generations. We were the catalyst for tomorrow's free and fair market. So, I do hope accountability prevails, that the retail's investor, that their voice starts to matter on mainstream media. And I truly believe it's the greatest time to be alive. Some of you, especially, the sad people, spend their time being hateful, the meltdowners, who take a little too much interest in our money. They're going to call us delusional. They've been calling us stupid for holding our shares, especially when, the Chapter 11 plan filed by the company it's projecting me at a 0% recovery. All I can say is that going forward, the markets are going to decide in due time who was stupid in the end. I know I'm in good company. Some of the shareholders sharing their insights on Reddit, the PP Show. Some of these are the most brilliant minds that I've ever encountered. Realize, Challenge by Krill, Life Relationship, Kais, PP, ABC Plur, Salvatore Tully, Michael, Region Formal, Whoopass, Edwin Barnes, Biggie Smalls, AIB, Dan23, Travis, David Simpson, KJ, Citizen. You know, we have a lot of these one-time guests as well. We had a very intelligent e-commerce expert, a woman who spoke about the terms and conditions on Teddy on the website the other day. You know, we have insightful whales like Ziz. We have Porsche, Pop. You know, these are the people who make the community what it is. You know, even the chat. Everyone in the PP Show chat, the mods, Goddard, SF, No Pie, Zilly, Ziggs, the Reg Show guy, Ninja Flex, Bye Bye Shorters, Hamburg, Mr. Ruth, Stock Digest, fucking Carter. You know, and everyone else, if I fail to mention you right now, you know, don't take offense, please. I can't think of others off the top of my head. And I do have a special thank you reserved for DRS FTW for the win. So your hype videos, man, are amazing. You know, I'd absolutely love to see this thing moon for you, for your family, and for every Bobby, you know, who's made my life over the past year so rich. You know, I want you to know that you're in good company and I'm in good company. You know, I don't have a finance or a legal background, but I am a scientist. I work in a very prestigious lab. It's top 3 in the world, and you know they pay me for my analytical skills, my critical thinking skills, my ability to see underlying truth. You know, when it's not immediately obvious, I get paid for that. You know, I don't think I'm stupid. And I genuinely believe that we are on the verge of MOAS. So, you know, with that said, there's no, you know, of course, there is a non-zero chance I could be wrong. And by sharing the information in this video, you know, I want to emphasize once again that, you know, I do not have a financial or a legal background whatsoever. And I'm not offering financial advice ever to anyone. I'm simply sharing my personal opinions on a stock that I'm personally deeply invested in. Everyone should conduct themselves independent of my input. This is likely going to be my last online appearance prior to the short squeeze. I think I'm just going to sit back and watch this bear trap unfold. You know, if at any time we hear news of any kind that indicates that we're heading to zero again, you could be damn sure that I'm still going to be holding my shares. So to echo Kais, I love the stock, and to echo PP, I love the community. And, you know, I hope we all shoot past the moon. We deserve it. We've deserved it. So before I actually end the clip, I also want to share my personal thoughts on where I think we are macroeconomically speaking. I don't think that anyone should trust me, bro. You know, I simply want to share 2 data points and leave you with them. And let them marinate in your mind so that, you know, hopefully you can better navigate your decision making going forward. And the first one is the inverted yield curve. So pause the video, look up the data. It's presented here going as far back as 1976, and study what it actually means. These gray areas that you're seeing, so these are indicating recessions. And notice that each and every recession going back in history occurs only when the yield curve starts to move back up. And it's not during the inversion, but after it reorients upwards. Notice that. And if you're looking at the far right, that's where we are today, we're still inverted. And lucky for us, notice that we're currently experiencing the deepest inversion over the past 40 years. So the economic pain has yet to come, you know, and it's during the recession itself, historically speaking, that's when we typically see the markets bottom overall. The second data point is this idea of net liquidity. So if you add up the balance sheets of a lot of central banks, including the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the European Central Bank, China, Japan, you add up all their balance sheets, and that gives you a good approximation of net liquidity in the global markets, and that's what's indicated on the yellow curve on the bottom. So when you look at the chart, you'll notice that the value of the trend of the net liquidity and the S&P, they're both synchronized. They're moving together. They have their highs matched, they have their lows matched. And what's fascinating is this divergence that's forming right now. So we're now at a time when the S&P is continuing to go up while net liquidity is going down. You can see that pretty clearly. And what's going to happen, if you want to know what's going to happen, you only need to go back a few years to the COVID-related 2020 recession to see what happens when we develop that kind of divergence. And I should note that this is data that I've borrowed from Benjamin Cowan. He's at Into the Cryptoverse. If you don't know him, I highly recommend you look him up. Brilliant man. With that said, I'm gonna sit back. I'm gonna watch the bear trap unfold. I've never been more bullish in my life, and I really think we're gonna short squeeze soon. I appreciate everyone's love and support, and I wish to see you all on the moon. Take care.
Good to see you, Scott.
So what is your reaction to this incredible rally that we saw today on that better than expected inflation report?
Well, I've been bearish for a year and a half or 2 years, but we keep our portfolio hedged, so it doesn't mean a lot from the net worth of our portfolio, or IP too much. But I am still very, or quite bearish on what is going to happen. A rally like this is, of course, very dramatic, to say the least, very dramatic. But you have them all the time in a bear market, and I still think we're in a bear market. You have these rallies because it's almost like a commodity. There's only a certain percentage that actually trade it or make that final move in it. So if you take the population of stockholders, there's only a small percentage that trade like this or move it. And when the market goes down, you have a short interest builds up. And then when you have any news, it suddenly propels this. So I do think it's certainly dramatic and maybe exciting, but I don't really think it changes my opinion on the basic problems that we have.
Why are you so negative on the market?
Well, whenever you have higher interests that have moved as they have here, and they really have moved quite a bit, and you have an inverted yield curve, you're getting really treasuries at a 5% yield, close to a 5% yield for relatively short-term treasuries. You are going to have a recession. And I think you do have a recession already. I mean, if you looked at the earnings of a lot of these companies, they're pretty bad. And I think a lot of these companies are cheap, by the way. And I think a lot of money will be made if you own certain of these, I like to say the Graham and Dodd type companies, not so much the high-tech companies. If you own them, they're dirt cheap, and eventually you'll make money.